Okay, this is a quick walkthrough of the existing PowerPoint and code, so I'm not going to do a code through walkthrough. If you need me to sort of do more on that, just ask me Wednesday morning, but just to sort of really draw some attention to these parts. So if you want to do the SQL part, which really you should, because then you wouldn't have to do the form transfer of data. You'd have one app that puts waypoints onto a database, you'd have a second app that retrieves waypoints from the database. Like I've said here, you must have an online database ready to go. You did this in level 5, so you've got the skills, you've got the grade for that. So it's just a good bit of practice. And like I've said in numerous lessons, it crops up on almost every job going, whether it's network technician, network manager, software developer, web developer. Tinkering with SQL and databases is utterly core stuff, so it's good to have that bit of practice, set aside a couple of hours for it. So just, if I come on to, this is my personal server. I'm hoping there's no information here that could cause me any issues. So this is obviously for DEFCON 1. If I click on PHP My Admin, and I know I showed some of this on Wednesday, it's going to show the database that I've made. I've put it inside my score system, so there we go, the Railroad VR score system. GPS waypoints, if I click on that, click on structure, that's the database that I've made. Where am I looking? I've got the GPS ID, GPS name, lon, lat, comment. That's all I've put in. It's not good enough anymore. I want to add sprite numbers. I'd like to add extra descriptions. Has it been collected yet or not? What time was it collected? Does it need resetting? There's a whole bunch of extra fields I could add. But that's it. You should have done this last year. If not, please ask, and I'll do something on PHP My Admin, or just go and raid my level 5 Moodle course. There's loads of stuff there on it. So that's my database. On mine, I personally have to go into MySQL databases to create users. If you're on other servers, quite often there's a user tab up here where you can add a user to it. But it's just important that you've got that user correct, so that you know what database you're talking to. Now, I think I've also mentioned in lessons, because of me having this older score system, I've had to stay on an older version of PHP My Admin, PHP, otherwise I'll have to rewrite all of it, and I'm just not prepared to do that right now. So I'm still on an older version of code. So just watch out between MySQL and MySQLi. Okay, so if I just jump, I'll show the PowerPoint again. So I'd already mentioned, you've got to, first of all, your permissions. Make sure you've said permission internet, permission access, otherwise your app can't talk through the web to the database. I made this mistake and couldn't make mine work. Then I've got an update database. Now if I go into my code and show you where this is, so back on main activity, you're all familiar with this. If I click on store position, so that's basically create my waypoint. Store position is hooked up to my set waypoint, so let's look at that function. So there we go, it's already on. So set waypoint, I get the things from the view, I add it to the list, I increment my number of points, do some sprite number stuff, so it just rotates through. That's kind of pointless at the moment. And then I finally add this little function, add waypoint to database. I decided to separate it out. I've had a rule for a very long time that if my function is bigger than one page, I think it's time to add a new function and separate it out, make it easier to manage. So once I've added it to the list, I then add to the database. So I come down here, add to database, just as it is on the PowerPoint, just so the code is there. I'm then saying, let's talk to the add waypoint.php. Let's get the longitude, let's get the latitude, and that's coming from those global variables. I've got lat1, lon1 up here, and that's obviously been set by the location. In fact, I'll just compress those. From what we said about technical guides. Why is that not compressing? There we go. That's coming from my location listener, because that's set in lat1, lat2, which you should be familiar with by now. So it's getting that data, it's putting it into a parameter. So you should have, I hope you would have done this last year. It's calling that URL. It's question mark separates the URL from parameters, and I'm giving it, that's the variable name, that's the variable data that I'm assigned to that name. Again, variable name, the data, variable name, data, variable name, data. Really, that should be getting filled in from that text box. When you're creating it, you should be typing something in there and then storing it. So right now, mine's not really finished. So all that's doing is just writing on screen that it's working, so I can see what's kind of going on. I get the URL, which is coming from this link. So the input stream, I don't think actually, the input stream is just to record the response from the server. Did it fail or was it successful? Buffered reader, that's just going to read through our files. String line, because it could be going, we could be sending some data back one at a time. A lot of this is not needed, but it's just to make sure we know if it's going wrong. So this is the main bit. We set a thread going so that so basically setting your program to multitask, so it can still operate the UI while it's trying to talk to the server. It stops from stalling. So try URL, so it's linking to the database. We're looping through. What information did it get? The URL was now that string, so really should have actioned it. And this is just catching any mistakes. That's it. That has sent your longitude and latitude to the server. Or if you use that line of code, obviously it's gone to my server. You should be replacing that with your own. But that's it. A waypoint's up there. I know this works because if I go on SQL, select all from GPS waypoints, and I run that. There we go, there's the 3 waypoints I've added. I did have a lot more, but I deleted them because it was just part of my testing process. If I run that program now, we could see it add. I'm not going to do it because I'm inside, no GPS signal. So that's putting something on the database. Like I say, you will need to create your own little server somewhere and then put some code similar to that. Now, as I said, this is SQL rather than SQLi. SQLi is the more current version of PHP, so you just need to look that up. And again, I can look through that on Wednesday if that's needed. But just watch carefully with SQLi. There's sometimes an extra parameter when you connect to the database. One of the mistakes I saw last week was one of the member of your class had these two the wrong way round, and that's why it was crashing, which I think that's what it was. So the next part, this would come on your player form. So the player form is, we want to get those signals. So this is the PHP code. Again, this connection, again, if you're doing a newer version of PHP, it's MySQLi connect, and it needs the local host, the username, the password, and the database name. So it's an extra parameter in there, but you get W3 Schools covers that. So I'm connected to the database, select all from waypoints, and it then echoes out the line. So that's the web page that's doing that bit of work. But again, it's no different to what you're doing back in level 5. So again, I'll jump back into my application. So I'm going to go on my platform. Should be on my platform. Let's double check. There we go. Yep. Nope. That's the update database. That's the wrong place. Okay. So this is now my function. Get waypoint from web. So what this is going to do, I would personally put this in like a time loop or something, so that if you were playing the game, obviously with our social isolation, we can't go and play it properly now. But right now I've just called it here. When my onCreate is called, somewhere on these lines, I've got a function that physically gets that data. I've lost it. Yeah, I've lost it. It's there somewhere. Oh, I had it on a button, didn't I? I had it on a button just to force it to check. But either way, I now connect to my getWaypoints.php. I mean, again, you can use my scripts to test yours, but it just might not have the right data, and then it could clash with other members of the class. So you could add 2 waypoints, and when you check it, you're going to get 10. So same again, get waypoints. No parameters this time. We're just getting all of them. If I was doing this as a real professional thing, I'd want to put what town I were in or what game ID was that I was playing. So it's calling that select all. It's doing the try. It's doing this. This is the main bit, this while loop. And I'm splitting the string, so it's going to get one line at a time. So just to prove it, if I go on the web and type in DEFCON 1, get waypoints. Oh, I hate it when Google does that. Why is it not typing? Have I typed something wrong? Oh, my fault. Not got a slash there. Okay, so you can see it sort of spitting it out all in one go. Because I'm not echoing a new line, it's all on one line. But as it comes in through the code, it won't be. Because that's looping through the records, again, just like I did last year. So temp equals line split, so I'm splitting it at the comma. So rather than one string, I've now got an array of strings for each individual section, so lon, lat, name, etc. What's critical is that you know which is which. I believe I coded this properly last week. 2 seconds. Okay, so this is a slightly longer version. So again, it's still the same waypoints. I'm still doing the thread thing. I'm now looping through each record one at a time. I split it at the comma. That dumps into an array. This was just for me outputting it to screen so I could see what was happening, because it took me a while to just get this right. Now if you'll notice, because it's an array, I'm saying the 0 position is ID, the first position is name, lon, lat, comment, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's the index of those variables coming from that database. So I've now assigned them to that little array. So again, I'm still inside the while loop. I'm now saying longitude and latitude. So lon is coming from 2, latitude is coming from 3. I've not commented anything ever. And then I've said string comment equals temp4, and I've ignored ID and name for the moment. This try catch, this is simply what if there's some gibberish data somehow has got in there. It doesn't make sense because it's trying to convert a string into a double. So this is just a little bit of validation. Hopefully you'll never see that. And I'm just saying, as long as they are not 0, so as long as longitude and latitude. Now obviously it is possible to have 0, but you'd have to be stood very, very still. Is that somewhere in the middle of England? Is that down by, I don't know, no it's not, is it? I don't know where GPS 00 is. I'll have to have a look. Then it's going to add it to the list. Then you can continue the game as normal, and that is basically it. So the only code that's not on the PowerPoint is me doing this split section. But if I leave that on screen long enough, you should be able to see it, you should be able to have a go at it. But that's how to access the database stuff. It's not a lot of code, it's just taking it a little bit at a time, making sure you don't make silly mistakes, which we all make. And miss semicolon, miss bracket, sometimes merging 2 lines. Okay, so that's it for now. Have a look through these. Any questions, ask me on Wednesday.